Right, welcome everyone. I need to find out a couple of things. First off, how many people do you guys have and how many different agencies are represented? That's very good. So just give you a little background of why you're here and why I'm here and kind of who I am and what I do. So a couple months ago, I asked Kathy if I could do an online training for agencies in the Star Valley area. I was trying to get the word out about mental wellness because I speak from experience. I've gone through some issues in the last 6 months to, I don't know, my lifetime, and I think it's worthy of sharing. And but before we get there, I kind of want to tell you a little bit about the ground rules with this online training and how this kind of works. I recognize that my camera is somewhat glitchy. My mouth doesn't move when I actually talk, but as long as you can listen and take some of the stuff to heart, we're going to get through this okay. So welcome. I'm really glad to be here teaching. I've done this before in person for a couple of agencies in my local area, volunteer and paid. I'm going to change the slide here. So I'll get to who I am and where I'm from and such, but the short video, it's about 6 minutes long, kind of talks a lot about what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to really try to get your feelers, tug at the heartstrings a little bit, and really talk about things that we don't like talking about, myself included. So Kathy, why don't you go ahead and start that video.
Here at Marysville, Tulsa, got 108. I'm getting a report there's a possible shooting in the cafeteria. You're on site right now.
Scene secure for A. Get him in here.
Copy.
Medic 61.
Medic 61, requesting you stand by in the area. So be GSW. Copy. So I have 865 SALS. These are confirming 2 code black 3.
Confirming 2 code black. From the cafeteria, snowpack.
Contacting the burgers. 861 mission contacting the burgers.
2 additional.
It's that kind of job where we don't want to talk about when we're having a tough time. We keep it in. Then we come into our job and we take on more of society's ills and we try and fix it. We've asked these young men and women to do sometimes incredible, amazing, unbelievable things that Hollywood makes movies about. Those big things take a toll. We owe it to them. We owe it to them to do everything we can to help them through these crises.
Units en route to residence fire. Type 1, 113 Avenue Northeast. Report of a house and garage fully involved. There is 1 female unaccounted for. 1 RP such on the back bed, another RP such is downstairs, and that she's disabled.
Okay, Battalion 81, why don't you go ahead and start me 3 more engines?
Copy, 3 more engines.
My name is Cat Knowles. I work for Seattle Fire Department. I've been a firefighter here for a little bit over a year. We go through many calls during the day. Some can be super influential to some people and some can be completely normal for other people. And if we don't treat those differently and treat those people differently and give them the tools to be able to deal with those situations, it's super hard for them to speak up sometimes. a lot of things add up after a while. I mean, if you're going on 10, 15 calls a day, and it can eat away at you, by the end of the day you end up being a little raw and a little bit less empathetic to people that you're dealing with, and I think sometimes it affects stuff outside of work. I went through something super tragic about 4 or 5 months ago. I lost my son to suicide, and for me, it was super hard for me I thought it was going to be super hard for me to come back to work. We have a critical incident management team, so they are set up to come in and help families, they come in and help the crew, they come in and help families of members of the crew if they have something going on, but they're members of our own fire service, so they're firefighters, they're people that have been through what we're going through, they have an understanding, but they also have some sort of training that gives them the tools to be able to help us in ways that we probably don't know. We'd gone on a call about, it was the shift before everything happened with my son, and we lost a baby to SIDS, and we did CPR all the way to the hospital, and they were here as soon as we got back from that call. There was a phone call in place, and they were going to come stop by and be able to help us out and give us tools to be able to deal with those type of things.
I'm Mike Washington, Seattle Fire Department. I've been a firefighter for 29 years. Well, I've been involved with peer support for a number of years, going back to around the Pang Warehouse fire time, and seeing how that was rolled out at the time and how it didn't work for a lot of firefighters, and dealing with the aftermath of our line of duty deaths. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be part of making it better. As someone who struggled with suicide as a firefighter, you look at society as a whole, and if we had a group of people here, we know that people as a child have gone through abuses, sexual molestation, psychological abuse, economic deprivations, you name it. And I had all those. I had all those as a child. So I joined the Marine Corps, and after the Marine Corps I became a firefighter, and I started seeing the things that we deal with in the fire service. And in the meantime, I'm still in the Marine Corps Reserve, and I'm going to Desert Storm, I'm going to Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, and I'm seeing things there. But I don't talk about them, because if you don't talk about it in the fire service, you don't talk about it in the Marine Corps either. It's that culture, right? That culture that we all wanted to be a part of. Before I even joined the Marine Corps, I had a litany of things. But what we do, we just put that away. It's just, especially at that time, I'm 55 years old, and at that time, okay, we don't talk about it. We're just gonna move on with our lives. And there's something to be said for moving on with your life, but you need help doing it. And then for me, the road to the idea of suicide, this serious road where I am on a bridge, was on June 14th, 2008. I was notified that my son was killed in action in Afghanistan. And I was at Fire Station 16 at the time. And the white Suburban pulled up, and that Marine officer came up and notified me that your son has been killed in action. And if there was the PTSD issues that I was already dealing with, kind of accelerated, as you can imagine, and things just got harder and harder. And my drinking increased. My marriage was failing, and these are all things that I think I had control over if I would have sought the help at the time, if I felt comfortable enough to reach out to somebody. And sometimes that's just your own thing, and part of what we want to do here in the as a peer support representative is make it okay to reach out. And I'm in that world, and I didn't feel like I could do it. Right. And so my world was spiraling out of control, and that put me literally on the bridge. That put me on a motorcycle going through an intersection with my eyes closed, just seeing what's going to happen on the other end. And then eventually that seeps over into your professional life. You might be able to think you're holding it together, but then you're going to get to that call, that one call that's going to say, you need some help, and you need it now.
right, good to go. I think that was a good short introduction talking about some of the signs. However, it's certainly not an all-inclusive type of a video. It doesn't involve the substance abuse or the PTSD as much. Doesn't talk about individual persons and firemen and EMS personnel that have committed suicide. And we're going to touch on that tonight. Again, here's another picture of me in uniform. I'm looking off to my left at my daughter. I knew that the kiddos would be coming down sometime tonight, but that's okay. I know if you guys are too. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this tonight is because they're here supporting me, and by doing this for you guys, it's somewhat therapeutic. I am attending some counseling periodically for what I need, but being able to connect with others is something that I feel like I've done well in the past, and I feel like I can continue to do it well in the future. So some of the objectives, I just want to share my personal story. I know it's not story time. I know some of you guys drove quite a ways to get there through the cold and the snow, and I appreciate that. I want to connect with at least one person whose story may resonate with the topics I described. For a long time, I thought I was alone, mostly because I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about my feelings. I'm a guy, and I still really don't want to talk about my feelings, but I have to. I want to reduce the first responder epidemic we are faced with through awareness and education. And what we're going over tonight is just a small portion, 2-hour portion of what the bigger package of what I want to teach about. I'm scheduled to teach a 4-hour session in April at one of our regional fire academies for all sorts of first responders, volunteer paid, fire EMS, law enforcement, and such. So, again, my name is Adam Knight. I'm a captain with Kootenai County Fire and Rescue in northern Idaho, and I'm also one of the co-founders and an instructor for EMT and fire training. So EMT and fire training is a mostly online program where we do a lot of EMSC, use some fire-related stuff, and then we also offer the initial certification courses where the students take the online course all on their own with contact from an instructor, and then students from essentially all over the world, as far as South Korea. In fact, they come to Post Falls, Idaho, they participate in a 5-day skills session, and then they come out in the end having their EMT. So that's what we do there, and we've been doing that for about 5 years. And if you don't know where Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is, I found a little map, and we're about 560 miles away, about 9 hours. I would have really preferred to be there tonight, but I'm not, so that's the way it is. North Idaho is it's beautiful, it's green, got a lot of lakes. I know where you live is beautiful as well. I've been through there, and because I've gone through there, that makes it all that more personal to me, because you guys are going to be the ones responding when I go in the ditch or my kid goes into cardiac arrest because they're choking on a hot dog. My now 6-year-old, that was something that plagued us for a lot of years, is that she liked hot dogs, and a lot of them. And so I've given her back blows 4 separate times where I should have called 911, but I didn't. So what I'm getting at is that I rely on you guys to protect me as I'm traveling through your area, and I'm sure you guys expect the same if you ever visit my area. So a little bit about my department. My department is based in Post Falls, Idaho. It's right on the Washington-Idaho border, and we protect everything around the city of Coeur d'Alene. We used to have a fireboat on the lake. We protect about 29 miles of Interstate 90. We do hazmat. We have a regional hazmat team for the 5 northern counties of Idaho. We do the structure fires. We do the EMS. We do lots of little things. I'm going to someone. Here we go. So we're a fire-based EMS system. We used to be volunteer and paid. Now we're strictly paid. I started off my first 4 years as a volunteer, and then I got hired. Also during those 4 years, I worked for the Forest Service in fire, and I traveled through all the western states, and as far east as Minnesota. We're about 110 square miles, running 6,500 annual call volume, and we work at 4896 work schedule. So, for example, tomorrow morning is the start of my shift set. We go in at 8 a.m. and I don't get off until 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. So it works out. It's tough to get used to, and so it's my understanding that you guys have a lot of different industries in your area, and that I recognize that a lot of you put in full days, and then you take the call when you have to. It doesn't matter what time of night it is, and then you come to trainings like this. The types of schedules that we actually both run, where we're on call essentially all the time, is that we get a lot of sleep deprivation. That adds to a lot of what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to mute here real quick. Okay. So this is my crew. I typically run with 5. This day we happen to have 4. And we had just got done shaving our heads in support of another fireman's 4-year-old son who had eye cancer. They found it on a whim. That's me, second from left, and a bunch of happy guys. Except, behind those smiles, you never know what's going on. All the different variables. You never know who's having a bad day. You never know who's going through a divorce. You never know whose kid just got diagnosed with cancer. And so that's something I want to emphasize here tonight, is that you never know the variables of what's going on in somebody's lives. I don't know what you guys went through today. But as an officer, it's one of my jobs to read my personnel and somewhat cater to their needs and provide them the peer support that they need. This is my family. I got a lot of pictures of my family in here tonight because I already mentioned it. They support me. I need their support. I support them. And they're really a fun bunch. This is my daughter and I. She's 15. Her name's Katie Ray. This is a couple of years ago. This is Luke. He wants to be a fireman when he grows up. And I totally want him to be a fireman. I think that's admirable. I think it's cool. He likes to come to the station. This just happened to be dress-up day, and somebody brought a fancy camera, and so we took some pictures. When he says, Dad, I want to be a fireman, you can't retire until I get to work with you, it's honorable. I think it's really cool. But at the same time, I go, man, inside I want to tell him, no, go do something else, because I don't want you to feel like I do, like I have. And I don't want you to experience the trauma, continuous trauma, after trauma, dead kid, car on its side, cardiac arrest, the 5 calls after midnight where we just lay down, we get back up. I want you to have a good, productive life and help people, but do I really want you doing this? And so I haven't had that talk with him yet, but Caitlin is also kind of going down that paramedic road, and I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that she's way more educated than I was as an 18-year-old kid coming into this. When I was still in high school when I took the fire class and Essentials of Firefighting, and it was a very tough era. We had just started this thing called a Modified Detroit. Before I volunteered, right around there, they just started bringing on paid guys, and so there were some days where it was just me and a 65-year-old captain, an old, gristly, salty guy, and it was a tough enough atmosphere, and you don't talk about your feelings, and you get the job done, and you smile, you go back to the station, you clean up, and you go about your day. We don't talk about feelings at all, and you'll hear a lot more about the expressing your feelings in the years to come if you haven't already talked about it. But let's talk about my family some more. So this is Nora. This was taken last week. I shaved off the caterpillar on my face, and she totally cried. She absolutely loved the mustache, but it's gone today. But my kids are all really healthy. They do good in school. They were great babies. They slept through the night. This is my wife. This is when we got married in 2007. She's great. She supports me. She's been with me throughout most of this fire service career. She understands the schedule. She expects me to be home late. She expects me to go in for the big calls. And I wouldn't be here without her support. But as of the last couple of years, things were not so great, not as much as I really thought they were. So I'm just trying to mute that. I'm a great husband. I've got a great home. We got money in the bank. We're stable. We're okay. But I was drinking to not drown my sorrows. I was drinking a lot to suppress the anxiety that I was having. This anxiety that I never really knew I had. I just knew I had this feeling of weirdness and uneasiness, and I was really irritable. And I wasn't treating her like I should. And that's where the reason a lot of the story came out. So why me? What happened? I was that guy that was sitting on the bumper of the truck, smiling all the time. I was a jovial alcoholic. I have a business with great staff, great partners. We're successful. I've got a great department. We're progressive. We do a lot of good things. We teach a lot. We're spreading our wealth. And so why was I feeling the way I was? And I don't think I ever really experienced a deep, dark depression. But I was not sleeping well. And then there were some years where I was sleeping too much. And I was always drinking. And when I say always drinking, I wasn't falling off a bar stool every night. But I was at home alone, doing my thing, and I was drunk. I don't remember going to bed a lot of nights. And I wasn't hurting anybody. I wasn't going to the bars. I wasn't doing those bad things that drunks do. The typical guy that we go to at midnight because they did fall off that bar stool and now they have a gash over their head. I started hiding my drinking because my wife started, for lack of better words, nagging me. At the time I really felt that was unwarranted. This is her problem, not mine. And I was wrong. I was a bad influence for my kids. I was, frankly, hungover going to work. I never took this stuff to work. I was always able to not drink for those 2 days. But when I say I was drinking a lot, in the last 10 years, when we were working this 48-96 shift, So we have the 4 days off and then the 2 days on. I was drinking every one of those 4 days. And in the last 10 years, I had only done 2 stints where I wasn't drinking. That was a 14-day stint and a 9-day stint. And that's just the way I did it. It was life. I couldn't imagine not drinking. And today I'm 154 days sober. I feel like I still want to drink, but I am not. I'm taking some medications that make it less attractive. I'm taking some medications that will make me sick if I do drink. But I talk about the drinking because culturally, in a lot of fire service cultures, it's the thing to do. When you go to a kid's birthday party at your firefighter's house or somebody else within the department, you bring a case of beer or a bottle of whiskey, and you guys have a good time. It's the time to celebrate. And that's okay if you can control it, but I couldn't control it. I had a problem, and I finally realized it. So like the slide said, why me? What happened? Sustained continuous trauma over 19 years. I was not in the military, and in the last 20 years, we've heard a lot about PTSD, with service members coming back, and they're just not right. They're messed up. They're not the same person that they were when they left. And so when I stopped treatment, I told my counselor this. I said, I'm not that guy. I have not seen war. I've had some bad calls, but I kind of think about them. I remember every detail, and yeah, sometimes I have dreams about them, but I don't have PTSD. I'm not that guy. And she disagreed with me. She said, Adam, you have had a 19-year career, albeit successful, but you have had continuous trauma, time and time and time again. And I'm gonna tell you about some of this trauma because, like I said earlier, it might resonate with you. This picture I have on the screen here is a 4-door sedan. It was hit by a train. I don't know if you guys have any railways in your area, but we have a lot crossing, and we have so many crossings in this county, it's unreal. And I've been on quite a few fatalities because of them. The one thing about this car is that the girl lived. This car was so full of garbage and clothes and everything else that it cushioned her, and she lived. And she was treated and released to the hospital that night. It took us 45 minutes to get her out of this car just because of how things were pinched and the size of her. And so why is this one of my traumas? She lived. Everything was fine. Well, for me, at the time, it was no big deal. It was a really cool call. It was technical. We had a large adrenaline rush. And it was just really cool. It was one of those calls where we're running the truck to get out the door to go to it, trying to beat that next engine that should be first on scene. I was first on scene of this call. So it just added to my trauma. Here's another one. This call was in a remote area. It came out as a fall out of a grader, a road grader. We took our utility truck up the hill. We got there. We were updated that the guy was in cardiac arrest. The guy was in his mid-60s. I was all maybe 26 years old. I did my job. It didn't affect me. We were not successful in bringing him back, but we flew him off the hill. As the helicopter was leaving, we got everybody together and we took a picture. I don't have that picture up here because I don't think it's appropriate. We're all smiling. We got our arms wrapped around each other. And as I look back at that picture, I'm like, oh my God, there's a dead guy in that helicopter, and we're just smiling. We're just like, it's no big deal. It's just another day, and we're having a good time. We got a helicopter on our call. This doesn't happen very often, but it was really cool. And it just added to my traumas. So when I think about these said traumas, the way that I kind of think about it is a stack of Jenga blocks. And a perfect lifestyle with no traumas, plenty of money, you got whatever makes you happy in life. There's no holes in that stack. But every time a trauma occurs, you pull one block out. And you pull a block out the other side. And then you maybe get a reprimand from work and you pull it out the other side. And maybe you get a flat tire while you're going on vacation. And you pull another block out. While it's not a fire or EMS related trauma, it still adds to your bad day. And what I learned is that a lot of these traumas go back to your childhood. I don't know if it was necessarily the case for me, but I know that my counselors and clinicians really dove into it. But a lot of people revert back to childhood abuse, whether it be sexual or physical. It's something that people hide. They don't want to let anybody know, but it's something that really, it's an attribute that is a negative and affects their current behavior, or it comes out. Here's another one. This is October 5th of 2016. It was, it was a gray day, and this guy was 30 miles from being home. He had driven all the way across the country, and he was almost home, and he ended up wrecking his truck. Now, why is this such a bad day for me? It's just another trauma. I think about what could have been, and then my mind starts going, wow, what if he went over the center of Jersey barrier, and it was me and my family driving, and we hit him, or he hit us. I've seen that time and time again. When we start going on these calls time and time again, we start thinking about, well, what if that was our family? And we start thinking, well, we're just not going to go. I've done that where I try in my mind to weigh the risk benefits of going somewhere, and I don't because I'm afraid I'm getting hit by a semi. Sounds silly, but that's where I was in a moment. Another thing this has done is made me hypervigilant, and hypervigilance is a good thing. But I'm hypervigilant at everything I do. When I go to a restaurant, I'm hypervigilant. I sit in the corner and I watch people. I look for the nearest exit, and I look for the next secondary exit, and I watch for the guy that's acting weird in the corner with a gun on his hip. Is that a weapon, or is that something to protect himself? I don't know. But all of this stuff ends up being attributed to PTSD and many more things. So what else? What else is in my list of traumas? Said traumas. How could it be so bad? So this top one in the white, crashes result in fatality and injuries. One dies in post-falls rollover. So we go to this call. It's midnight, and it wasn't dispatched anything like what we found when we got there. The dispatcher did as much as they could with the information they had. In fact, all the information they had was a homeowner calling and said, I think there's a car crash out in my front yard. This car hit a tree about, 15 inches in diameter. And we get there, find that it was a head-on into a tree, and then it rolled over and ejected both occupants of the vehicle. Talk about a helpless feeling. So there's one female lying on the ground, about 30 years old, and she's got that stereotypical gurgling respirations, snoring respirations, and she's lying on the ground. And at the same time, her friend is a 23-year-old. She's lying out the back window. It's a little two-door vehicle. All the windows are broken. The top of the roof is smashed down. And this female is laying halfway out the back window, and she's trapped somewhere underneath the C post. And long story short, we couldn't extricate her right away. Had we had the manpower and initially and stuff, we probably could have, but we just didn't have the right equipment there at the right time. And I watched her die, you know, from breathing regular to agonal respirations to dead. And then to top it off, well, we transported her friends who was under the influence. But to top it off with this female, we were there for 4 hours providing scene lighting and for the law enforcement's investigation, and we weren't allowed to extricate her until the coroner had done their investigation. So it's just a sad experience and kind of a helpless type of feeling. The bottom one, mother of 4 dies after being struck in a parking lot. This is another call that's very vivid to me because of how it was dispatched and who hit the 39-year-old and the age that she was. A beautiful 39-year-old female was simply running to the store to grab something simple. And an older gentleman backed into her from a parked position, so we're talking less than 5 miles an hour, and he proceeded to run over her chest and abdomen. We got there, and it was a very dark night. She was wearing dark clothing. It was a little drizzly, a little bit of rain. But when we got there, she was conscious, and she was talking to us, and she said, I can't breathe. I'm having difficulty breathing. We had paramedics on scene with us, and we did everything we could for her. We're talking, the fire station is 1,000 feet away, and the hospital's 10 miles away. This was a fast-paced incident. We didn't mess around, but she still died, and there was nothing we could do about it. It's very sad. So the family of the man that hit her, our family is very distraught, and we're sorry for the loss of the other family. It was an accident. It was simply an accident. And the driver was not charged. The driver had fire department ties. He was used to be one of the chiefs of the department. So it was a very sad ordeal. Mother's Day of 2010. It's these small details that I know some of you are thinking about your calls, and I know that some of you can remember the dates. I know that some of you can remember where you were when you got the call, or the tones went out, or your pagers went off. I know that you can remember the smells that you smelled when you got on scene, and that's something that stays with me with Mother's Day of 2010. It was on May 10th, May 11th, something like that. It was an awesome spring day. I was at a slow station, and I don't think we had run any calls yet. And we get dispatched for this motor vehicle accident I don't say way. It was about a 20-minute response time on a good day. It's just part of our district that's a ways out there, and our district for EMS goes a lot further than this. So we're dispatched, and it's for a semi-accident. And we're thinking, whoa, this could get good. This station I'm assigned to at this time is known for really gnarly calls, but not a lot of them. We're just slower, but we run a lot of good ones. And so we're en route, and I'm the driver at the time. And the update is it's a young female that was involved in a semi-accident. And we're digging for more. What happened? And then as we got more information, it was a father that was a truck driver, and he was at home with his family, and it was a Sunday, And so he's getting ready to go back on the road, so he's going to go to his shop and grease what he needs to grease, check his brakes, do what truckers do. And so he throws his around 7-year-old son in the front seat. What he didn't know is that Julie was playing on the back of the truck. It was just the tractor, no trailer. And as he backed out the driveway and drove down the road, Julie fell between the duals of the drivers. And she was stuck in that tire, in between those tires, for about 1,000 feet until they got down to the shop where the father did his maintenance. And at that time, that's when he knew that he had killed his daughter. As we're getting this update, I started to kind of lose it. I started to cry as we're going down the road. I had never been on an incident like this. And at the time, when Julie died, she was 4, and at the time I had a 5-year-old daughter. So it's really hit home for me. And we get there, and she's laying on the tailgate, covered in a blanket. I can remember her pink boots. I did not confirm she was deceased. That was another crew, an ambulance crew that showed up with us. I kept my distance because I had already started crying, and I couldn't hold it. I couldn't stay strong. It was too much for me. My officer at the time did a fantastic job with peer support for the crews and the family, and I just remember the details. The family crying, more families showing up. This is a large family that inhabits this whole area. In fact, the picture that I have on here is a wedding venue that they own. It's a beautiful setting, big grassy fields. The elk come down every night. The other thing to stick with this call for me is that it was a one-way in and one-way out situation. Because as we went in, we essentially drove over the crime scene, and law enforcement wouldn't let us drive out. They considered it a crime scene. It wasn't a crime, but there were bits of Julie's hair and blood and brain matter on the road, and they had to investigate that. So not only could we not leave, we were there with the distraught family, and we were distraught ourselves. We just wanted to get out of there. This is the call that bugs me the most. And when I finally sought help, they asked me, do you have flashbacks? I'm like, I had some calls that I think of, but I don't have flashbacks. I don't know. But they were wrong. This is that call that as I'm laying in bed at night, it just pops in my head. I think about it all the time, and I sought treatment for it, and it has helped, be it not so traumatic that I can at least talk about it without breaking down. But this is the worst call I've ever been on, and I hope to never go on, honestly, hope to never go on a traumatic event ever in my career. It's inevitable, but it's just a sad one for sure. And I'm sorry if this hits too close to home for you guys, but you guys are not alone. Any little bit of research reveals that you guys have some nasty incidents. And, weekend accident, Star Valley claims 3. It's very rare that we have a fatality in and of itself, but to have 3 in one setting, that's too much. To get worse, but that's tough. Star Valley teen, death confirmed after the school parking lot incident. I don't know the details, but I'm sure some of you do. It's a sad incident. Jackson man dies in a car crash near Thane. That's too close to home. Nobody should be dying in your on your roadways, but they do. Like you said, the feeling, the smells, the sights, sometimes they're hard to shake. And everyone deals with them differently. Some people reach for a higher power. They look to God to assist them with their traumas, and it works. Some people go to drinking, And it worked for a while. It numbed that pain. It took care of that anxiety. It took care of any angst that I had. Other people look to go to friends and peer support, and that's how they receive their help. So, sustained, non-treated, poor adjustment, negative coping strategies, and continuous trauma is kind of where I got to where I am today. Anxiety, you betcha. PTSD, yes. Not as bad as others, but it's my PTSD. Substance abuse, it took me a long time to be honest with myself and to admit that I had a drinking problem. My wife would call me a drunk or an alcoholic, and it would absolutely infuriate me because that's not who I am. I go on drunks on calls, people that are alcoholics, that are worthless. There's huge stigma behind the substance abuse. It's not me. That's not what I do. I'm a jovial drunk. I play with kids more. I get things done. I get chores done, but I couldn't control it. I didn't control it. And the suicidal ideation. There was a time about middle of August where I was honest with people about suicidal ideation. I thought about suicide, and it's not a comfortable topic to talk about. But the reality is that if that guy has thought about it, me, that others have thought about it too. And I thought about it so much that I've come up with some plans to take care of my family after I'm gone. I thought about, I'm going to do this on duty because it's going to be considered a line-of-duty death. I'm going to make it look like an accident. They'll never prove it was a suicide, and my family's going to get a lot of money. They'll be safe. They'll be taken care of. And I know a lot of people can't fathom what suicide, people thinking about suicide. How could you think about suicide? How could you be so ignorant and such a jerk that you're thinking about suicide? It's just unfathomable to some people. And I have it, and a lot of people do, and they don't want to talk about it. In a lot of the articles and such that I've read, the biggest way to prevent suicide is to talk about it, and that was one of the driving forces of why I came up with this presentation. So, in the end, yes, that's me. I'm not 100%. I'm still in recovery. Recovery is a term that's used for people that were substance abuse users, and they're no longer using, and they're in the recovery period. I choose, like I said earlier, not to drink. I would really like to, but for reasons of saving my family and proving to myself that I can not drink, I don't. I want to remain sober. I can think again, I remember things a lot better, and I'm present. That was one of the biggest things in our counseling that my wife was upset about, is that I was not present. On any given day off, a lot of days, I was coming home, and if I wasn't drinking a beer on the way home, it was around noon when I started in on the whiskey. If I really didn't have anywhere to go or kids to pick up, I had no reason not to drink, so I did. I was, like I said earlier, I wasn't hurting anybody. I was out mowing the lawn. I've got a huge lawn, or on a day like today, I got 4 inches of fresh snow. I'm out on the tractor, the four-wheeler plowing. I'm just having a good time by myself, and I'm not hurting anybody. But I was. So I'll go back a slide to this. I did a lot of research before I brought this to you guys, and I just want to share some of the keywords. If you look up any of these things, including the bottom that says you are not alone, they're going to come up with some resource or some information on how a suicide occurred, how to prevent the suicide, different ways to stop drinking, treatment centers. I need help, but I don't know how to ask. I picked up the phone several times, and I put it back down. It sounds cliche, but I did. I dialed the number, but I really didn't want to tell anybody else my problems, because I didn't really need help. This is not my problem. This is somebody else's problem. But I did. I finally asked for help because I couldn't sustain the way life was going anymore mentally, and my family couldn't stand it either. So, like I said, right around the middle of August, I became vulnerable and transparent. I wouldn't have just told anybody that I had a plan for suicide, and would have been pretty easy. Out on the interstate on a car fire, I could have tripped over a hose and accidentally fell into traffic, and that would have been it. Simple as that. Sad to think about. But that's the ideation that came up. When I had the ideation, it seemed so easy, and it made so much sense. But really, the strength of my family kind of pulls me back in, and it helps. On December 27th of a month and a couple weeks ago, one of the firefighters at work had probably the worst day of his life. His 15-year-old daughter hung herself in the closet. This is a good girl, 15 years old. I get the teenage hormones and the attitudes and all the stuff that goes along with that, but this is a good girl that had a pretty good life, had a great Christmas to their family, and this dad and their family is now turned upside down. She hung herself in her closet. There was no fight that provoked it. There was no sign whatsoever. So this ideation, when someone gets it in their head, it doesn't take much for them to finish it. So let's just talk about it. So my vulnerability, and when I sought help on September 6th, 2018. I took off for the longest time I've ever been away from my family, and flew all the way across the country to a treatment center called the IAFF Center of Excellence for Behavioral Health Treatment and Recovery. This was not a place to just go sober up and be there for a while and come back home and everything's fine. This is how naive I was when I first started talking to these guys. They were terrific. They told me exactly what I needed to do. Essentially, just buy a plane ticket and get out here. We'll take care of you. Come tomorrow if you can. And I chose to wait about 20 days before I went because I wanted to see my little girl start her first day of kindergarten. So I did, and I left the next day. So a lot of treatment centers, some treatment centers are the ones where you go to sober up, do your thing, and leave. But a lot of them are good. They work on your mental health. They try to figure out what the root cause of why you feel the way you do. You know, some guys simply drink because they're bored and they don't have any mental health issues. At this Center of Excellence in Maryland, when I was there was about 30 people there at all times from all across the country, and they were there for a lot of various reasons. Now, when I think of a professional in the fire service or EMS service, and I'm talking about paid or volunteer, I think of, I can't see you guys, but I think of guys like you, and guys like that are on my department, and the guys that serve the community that I actually live in. I don't live in the same fire district that I serve. These are good guys. They're clean. You know, they're your stereotypical firemen. They're in good shape. They had drive. And so when I went to this facility and I learned, I met a lot of good guys that were cocaine addicts. And after a few days of being there, there was another guy that was addicted to heroin. And he was addicted to oxycodone. And they've been addicted for years. And they've served their departments for years. I'm thinking, how can you get away with this? Don't you guys do drug tests? Don't you do this? Don't you do that? And they simply became addicted, and they couldn't get themselves out of it. So at the Center of Excellence, I lived there for 27 days, and it was one of the best things I've done in my life. I feel way better, and I prefer not to do it again, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. So we need to take a break. We'll take a break after this. So this is a group setting, and where I tell you guys a lot of my personal stories and how I felt in instances. Feel free to share that with whomever you like. As you talk amongst yourselves on break and afterwards, feel free to open up and be honest with one another. However, what happens between you and that group or that other person, keep that between yourselves, because some stories are very private, and they don't want others out there in the community or the department to know. Another thing is that you should not judge yourself or others. One of the biggest things that I dealt with when I got to the Center of Excellence was shame and guilt. I was still very shameful that I had to leave my family, that I was an alcoholic, that I couldn't control my thoughts and feelings with this PTSD stuff. I really felt that I was a screw up, and that was my story. And as I was out there listening to other stories, there were a lot worse ones that people were really struggling with. So I was glad to get to know them and their stories and provide support for them. And overall, it's okay not to speak if you don't feel comfortable. If you have a peer or a spouse that you can talk to and want to talk to, if you have somebody at church that provides you support, then that's your outlet, and I encourage you to use that. So with that, let's go ahead and let's take a 10-minute break. Okay, let's get going again. So I lift this picture up purposely on a break. It was the first one that really hit me, and it's one I decided needed to put a presentation on. So as most of you may know, Robin Williams killed himself some time ago, and we all remember him as a happy guy. Mrs. Doubtfire, Jumanji, Patch Adams, a lot of dang movies where he's funny. He made a lot of us laugh over the years. So how was he so depressed or suicidal that he went through with it? So when we think about what depression looks like, this is Marilyn Manson on the top, some scary-looking guy, never smiling. That's what we think it looks like, but what it really looks like is Robin Williams smiling. For those of you who knew Anthony Bourdain, famous traveler, writer, he's got a lot of shows out there, a very vibrant man. He had a little bit of a dark past. He got over that with drugs and alcohol, but he killed himself this year, or last year. The lead singer of Linkin Park, he made a lot of people happy. He has a great voice, and he killed himself. I just, I would like to say I don't understand it, but the ideation that I've experienced, I do kind of get it. And it's sad, so I want to prevent it. So let's go ahead and let's learn about Chip Terry while we can.
And you just took it as it's part of the job. I don't think anybody realizes the toll it takes on them, even when you're living with them, you know, for 30 years.
But what people don't see at 3 o'clock in the morning is when a young lieutenant has to put 2 toddlers and their grandmother in a body bag. Well, what happens when we go home? You know, we take those things home to our children and our wives.
I heard a knock on the door. The dogs started barking. And as I was coming down the steps, it's a glass door. I saw 3 men in suits. And I knew. We owe it to these first responders to get them the mental health that they need. And the only way I feel like we can do that is with awareness. So my goal in life right now is if we can take the awareness to that level where people know that there are places to go and resources available, let's do it, you know.
So this guy, Chip, you know, he was already retired, so it was so bad that he needed to end his life. We don't know the variables like I described earlier, but I guarantee a lot of it was the remnants of the PTSD and the calls that he had experienced. It's real. You know, it's real for these guys too. So here's the reality. You never know when that guy next to you has been thinking about suicide, your partner. The guy you've been sitting next to you for the last 10 years, your driver, your captain, your lieutenant. You just never know because we don't talk about it. And neither did Mike. I knew Mike. Mike was at the Center of Excellence when I got there. Mike was that guy that was a heroin addict. When the first of the month came around, he was eligible for his hydrocodone. And when he was out of those, he went to his dealer. When his dealer was out of hydros, he went to the heroin. And it was a vicious cycle. He spent hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month on drugs just to get his high, his addiction. I don't know about you guys, but he doesn't look like a drug addict to me. So Mike was with Coral Springs Fire Department, was all of 41 years old. He was at the Parkland shootings, the Parkland High School shootings, and if memory serves me right, his job was to shovel kids in the back of ambulances and transport them to the hospital. Now, I don't know where Coral Springs Fire Department is, other than the Orlando area, but when I talk about my experiences and Mike's experiences, and when I talk to you guys, we all respond to the same car wreck, where we arrive, we do a size up, we treat the patients, we triage them, and we transport them. We all arrive at the structure fire, we determine how many stories the home is, how many square foot it is, how big it is, does it have a basement. And what I want to emphasize to you guys is that your 1,200 square foot home is the same as my 1,200 square foot home. We respond to the same type of incidences. We just live in different parts of the country. And so as Mike responded to the Parkland shootings, I guarantee you he had never thought that he would respond to a high school shooting in his career. I don't think I will either. But I hope I never do. But the struggle is real. It's these incidents happen in big towns, small towns, and it happened to him. And don't ever let your guard down and get complacent that it can't happen to you, because it might. So Mike was there for about a week before I left, and he had a great speech about living life to its fullest and slow down and live in the moment, and it was great. He was a big jovial guy. And Mike went home and shot himself a week later, and we really don't know why. But he was holding something back that he hid really well from us. He was the first fatality that had occurred of a patient, if you will, that had gone to that treatment center. And it really affected staff, and it really affected the firefighters that were there that had been treated with him. Ben Hershey was all of 39. And I know you guys know where Blackfoot, Idaho is, but he was the current fire marshal at Blackfoot Fire Department. He hung himself last fall. Why? What was so bad in his life that he had to hang himself? And nobody saw it coming. I talked to a couple of his friends, who talked to a couple other of his friends, and he, really the only indication that somebody may have picked up on was that he called his buddy and said that he's like, hey, I can't make it to the Metallica concert next week. Sell your tickets or give them to somebody else. I just can't make it. And whomever that friend was blown away. He said, man, Metallica's your band. We've been waiting for this. And he's still, something came up, I can't go. And things come up. So he went along with it, and Ben died a week later. He hung himself, and we don't know why. Captain Eric was 41. He was with the Orange County Fire Authority. Mind you, it's a large department. It's larger than any of ours here tonight. But he still served out of one station in one area, and he still ran the same calls. He still picked up the same old ladies, and he still encountered those same traumatic events that you and I have encountered. He decided to jump off a freeway bridge onto I-5 in 2016. Memory serves me right, it was his first new area. And so his guys, or maybe guys from a different shift from his station, had to come pick him up, had to work him. Captain Wayne from LA County Fire, he took a walk into a canyon and shot himself. I don't know why. I don't know if there was any signs, any indications. Nicole, look at her. Look at Nicole. She's a beautiful 31-year-old girl. She was a firefighter with Fairfax County Fire Department, and she decided to go into the woods and hang herself. Now, what would possess a 31-year-old, probably less than 10 years in the fire service, to go hang herself? It came back that she had been severely bullied by the so-called professionals within her ranks and with her fire department. She had been bullied online and in person, and she had just had enough of it. You know, we'll never know if there's anything more than that, but the bullying is known, and it was too much for her. So I think back, and I think about some of the stuff that goes on in the firehouses and all the backstabbing that could occur, and the trash talking that goes on, and some of it just doesn't make sense. How one person can make themselves feel better by making another person feel like crap. It's something that's definitely, as I learn more about her instance, you know, the more that I'm around the guys and trash talking goes on, I put it to a stop. It doesn't need to happen. Battalion Chief Dangerfield of Indian River County Fire and Rescue. He shot himself in 2016 after he called dispatch and told them where they could find him. Right before he killed himself, he wrote, "PTSD for firefighters is real. If your loved one is experiencing signs, get them help quickly. 27 years of deaths and babies dying in your hands is a memory that you will never forget or get rid of. It haunted me daily until now. My love to my crews. Be safe. Take care. I love you all." He obviously wasn't getting the help he needed. He may have denied that help, or he may have not known how to get it. He may not have known anyone that had had similar feelings or thoughts, but he ultimately killed himself. According to the International Association of Firefighters, PTSD is a serious and chronic condition that can ruin the careers of firefighters and paramedics, destroy families, and jeopardize public and firefighter safety. According to the Journal of Occupational Health, approximately 20% of firefighters and paramedics have PTSD. Furthermore, according to a 2015 Florida State University study, nearly half of the firefighters surveyed have thought about suicide. 19% had plans, 15% have made suicide attempts, and in fact, those with PTSD are 6 times more likely to attempt suicide compared to demographically matched controls. Now, these percentages on the ideation, the plans, and the attempts, the different studies and material that I've read are similar between all first responders. I'm talking volunteer, EMS, fire, correctional, police officers, everything in that first responder category. I don't know about you guys, but I have not been surveyed. So who was it that got surveyed? And how many of them were honest? Now I think about a survey like this, and I'm looking at it, and it says, have you ever thought about killing yourself? I'm not sure I'm going to be honest with that answer. I don't know who's reading this. I don't know who's going to see my name on this random survey. So I think these statistics are much higher than they really are. So we've talked about PTSD. You know, the whole topic with our subject tonight was the suicide and suicide ideation, but it all encompasses everything, and all of these are signs and symptoms. So what is PTSD? It can develop after exposure to a potentially traumatic event that is beyond a typical stressor. Events that may lead to PTSD include, but are not limited to, violent personal assaults, natural or human-caused disasters, accidents, combat, and other forms of violence. Exposure to events like these is common. About one half of all U.S. adults will experience at least one traumatic event in their lives, but most will not develop PTSD. People who experience PTSD may have persistent, frightening thoughts and memories of the events, experience sleep problems, feel detached or numb, or may easily be startled. In severe forms, PTSD can significantly impair a person's ability to function at work, at home, and socially. So one level below the PTSD is simply post-traumatic stress. Anytime there is a unexpected death due to a traumatic event, a child dies in a car wreck, fall and slip on the ice and have a traumatic brain injury where somebody's unconscious in a coma, anything that's significantly traumatic. You can have post-traumatic stress. That is a common thing. And these same feelings of numb, easily startled, confusion, not understanding what's going on, that can last up to a month. If it persists after that month long, then it becomes a disorder, or it's also referred to as a post-traumatic stress injury rather than a disorder. And here's another infogram on those suicide thoughts and behaviors. 47% of firefighters, and like I said earlier, first responders have thought about suicide. It just may have been for a second. It may have been 5 different times and it went away. But compared to the normal general population, it's significantly higher. And you guys can see the rest. 16% of attempts versus the 2 to 9% of the general population. It's very scary. This is Yorktown Fire Department. It's a volunteer fire department that's participated in the Lip Sync Challenge. This one really hit me because I'll just let you guys watch.
Falling too fast to prepare for this. Tripping in the world could be dangerous. Everybody circling as vultures. Negative, nepotist. Everybody waiting for the fall of man. Everybody praying for the end of times. Everybody hoping they could be the one. I was born to run, I was born for this. Whip, whip, run me like a racehorse. Pull me like a ripcord. Break me down and build me up. I wanna be the slip, slip. Word upon your lip, lip. Rather that you rip, rip. Break me down and build me up. Whatever it takes. In these times of doing what you're told, keep these feelings, no one knows. Whatever happened to the young man's heart, swallowed by pain as he slowly fell apart. And I'm staring down the barrel of a 45, swimming through the ashes of another life. No real reason to accept the way things have changed. Staring down the barrel of a 45.
It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Yorktown first responder.
Whatever it takes, 'cause I love the adrenaline in my veins. I do whatever it takes, 'cause I love how it feels when I break the chain. Whatever it takes, yeah, take me to the top. I'm ready for whatever it takes, 'cause I love the adrenaline in my veins. I do what it takes.
Last year, it was reported that 243 first responders took their own lives. This included police officers, firefighters, and EMS personnel. That's a number that surpassed all line of duty deaths for that year. This is an unfortunate and unacceptable trend across all public service entities. The deeply troubling thing is that the number of actual suicides is most likely more than what's stated due to reporting discrepancies. We created this video to highlight this troublesome trend and to provide steps of identifying those in need and resources to help share the load. Identification and education are the stepping stones to prevention. Suicide doesn't have one single cause, and the signs aren't always obvious. Some warning signs include talking about or looking for ways to die or kill oneself, talking about feeling hopeless or having no purpose, being trapped or in unbearable pain, talk about being a burden to others, increasing use of drugs and alcohol, acting anxious, agitated, or reckless, sleeping too little or sleeping too much, withdrawal or feeling isolated, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, displaying extreme mood swings. These are just a few possible signs, but there could also be others. The Share the Load campaign, spearheaded by the National Volunteer Firefighter Council, has provided 5 steps to follow for helping anyone in need. First off, ask. Ask them if they're okay. Ask them if they need help. Keep them safe. Whether it's at your house or somewhere else, keep them from doing harm. Be there. Be there to comfort, talk, or whatever, as long as you're there for them. Help them connect. Give them the resources to get the help they need. Follow up. Continue to show you care. Ask them how they're doing or if they need any other help. The National Volunteer Fire Council has a fire and EMS helpline available. You can call them at 1-888-731-FIRE. You'll be connected to somebody that can help you immediately and provide you resources to help you work past this tough time in your life. The National Law Enforcement Officers Hotline, COP Line, is a peer-supported resource that can be contacted at 1-800-267-5463. Another resource is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's available 24/7, and you can call that at 1-800-273-TALK. Or you can also chat on their website. All these operations are 24/7, and all calls are strictly confidential, and there's no fear of punitive repercussions from making the call. If you need help, please reach out. Your brothers and sisters are here for you. You don't have to go this alone.
So that video got me pretty good when I first watched it. That's another one that resonated with me. When the guy was in the living room and his kid came in with the ball and the kid just wanted to play. I was the guy that waved him off. I just don't bother me right now. I don't want to play with you right now. And that was me often. And you know, I never took any pills, but the whiskey. You know, there was some definite feelings in that video, and I hope you took away something from it. So alone with my thoughts. I've alluded to this a lot, in that I really felt alone. I really felt that nobody could help. I didn't want anybody to know my thoughts. I didn't want my co-founders. I didn't want my fire department. I didn't want my wife to know what I was thinking. And I stole the thought, the saying from the guy in this next video, unmasked.
Report of instruction fire 215. 16 North Huron Street. Attention Engine 5, Engine 2, Ladder 1, Rescue 1, C3 have reported a structure fire. 24-yard, 2.5 story fire stowing. Time is 8:56. Contact channel 27. Agree code responding.
My name's Chris Howe. I'm a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. I'm also a firefighter. From an early age, I felt that that I didn't belong. I didn't have a place in life. I didn't have a lot of friends around me until I found drugs and alcohol. It's what I did for fun for a long time until I lost the ability to choose whether or not I could stop. Lots of times I found myself alone with my thoughts in a bottle and drugs. I just didn't belong. I felt like I just absolutely did not belong. I was working in a factory. I noticed one of my coworkers that would always stare at me. He'd see me come into work hurting and looking very painful each day, and one day he came up to me and he said, you know, if you ever get sick and tired of being sick and tired, give me a call. And he handed me a piece of paper with his name and his number on it. 3 months or so after that, I found myself alone in a bar. I found myself picking through my wallet looking for any kind of money or anything that I could use to get another drink, and I came across his number. I picked up the phone and I called him, and he explained to me that he was a recovered alcoholic, and he had been for 18 years. I agreed to go to a meeting the next day. There was a lot of people smiling and shaking hands, introducing themselves. They were warm people, and I felt a sense of ease in the room, not unlike the sense of ease I felt when I took my first drink. However, I sat there and compared myself to everybody, and I thought, well, that stuff hasn't happened to me yet. I haven't lost a house, I haven't lost a marriage, I haven't lost a car, I still have my job. I felt like these things were what kept me from being an alcoholic or a drug addict, because I still had material things. I didn't realize that the feelings of desperation and the pain inside was what really would make me an alcoholic or an addict. When I started with the fire department, the first thing I heard was, not to show your weakness. I felt like I was incapable of doing some of the things that everybody else could do, so I hid behind drugs and alcohol again and further isolated myself. I was so anxious and jittery that, that's all I could think about. It was a really scary place to live, because I'm supposed to be working a job where I'm saving people's lives, and I couldn't even take care of my own. The last year of my drinking and using career, I was so ashamed and disgusted in myself. I took all the mirrors down in my house. Anything I could see my reflection in was off the walls. I felt like I was in a deep, dark hole all alone, and I had no idea how to get out. Finally, one day, I woke up with the intention to commit suicide. I just knew I couldn't live that way any longer. I was going through a list of ways to do it and what would be the least painful. I was determined. At some point that morning, a wave of emotions hit me. Something in me said, you better go check those people out, those people that were smiling and laughing and shaking your hand and so happy to be sober. I walked into the same room that I'd been going into for 10 years, and I walked in with different eyes, different ears, and most importantly, a different heart. That deep, dark hole that I was so desperately sitting in, looking up for help, I finally reached up for help, and when I did reach up, there was thousands of hands ready to catapult me out of this hole. I was finally able to find that acceptance in recovery without drugs or alcohol. I'm able to finally do my job with confidence. I'm able to finally, relearn some of the things that were taught to me that, I might have taken for granted. I'm able to be a resource for people at work who are struggling, because this is a job where, alcohol dependence is an issue. And, we see a lot of things that most people don't see and have to deal with. To be able to give back at the place where I felt I took so much from is truly a blessing for me. By trade, my job is to help people, but to have this extra piece of recovery to offer to somebody who's still out there sick and suffering is a complete asset to me, and I hope that somebody I help out there might be able to one day reach out that hand and help somebody else. Every day you have a chance to change your life. You just haven't realized the journey's probably already begun.
Okay. Just that, so another reminder that you're not alone, and I wasn't alone. So this next little story, we're almost done, and I'll take some questions as well. But my son, he's 9, and he asked to use my computer one day, and I finally let him use it. I don't let the kids really touch this thing, but he's learning some stuff in school, and so he wanted to use it, so I let him do it. And I didn't give him anything to research anything, but he made this on his own. I just want to share it with you guys because kids are intuitive. They pick up on things when you really think they don't. And he made this little message for me at the start of every day, more the start of the shift set at work. And so it says, "Good morning, get ready to start the day, from Luke to a good dad." So, oh, this is cool. I didn't expect this. So it says, "Don't be sad even though it is hard because of all the horrible things you see almost every day. I'll always love you." And that hit me. It hit me pretty hard that I talk about it out loud enough that he's picking up on it and that he sees my emotions. I don't see horrible things every day, but it's a horrible thing to see every once in a while that kind of cloud over all the good days. It was a good gesture for my kiddo, and it means a lot to me to actually look at this and know and remember that I am loved. So this is us on Thanksgiving. Had to work at Thanksgiving this year. Ate way too much food. All our families got together, and we got to take some pictures. So I don't count every day that I've been sober, but I count them a lot. And this is about 3 months or so, and that was a big day to me. This is probably the first Thanksgiving in a long time that I've been sober, so it's a special day for me. So how do we wrap all this stuff up, and how do we feel better? How do we not feel so crappy? So counseling is huge. When I went and first saw a counselor about my alcohol use, and his recommendation was to not drink so much. Just don't drink so much, and write down what you do drink. That way you can look at it later. He had no other solutions. He wasn't the right counselor for me. And I had this large stigma about going to counseling anyhow. I never wanted to tell anybody my problems or admit that I had a problem myself. So going to counseling was never an option for me, a personal option. But it is now. It's a huge one. I'll go over Deer Hollow, or I've already gone over the IFF. So your stress management, talking to others, peer support, pastors, friends, work on your coping skills. The medications, I despise taking medications until recently. The irritability, the anxiety, simply was overwhelming, and I didn't know that it could be suppressed to the point it is. I just was adamantly against it, but now I'm taking some, and so I'm just passing this on that if you are feeling anxiety, or just something's not right, talk to your doctor. There are ways, and maybe you can go talk to the specialist. If it's drinking or any other substance abuse, talk to a substance abuse counselor or physician. Your general practitioners don't know much of anything. Meditation. I was never ever a meditation guy, but this is something we practiced back in D.C., and it really worked. It was 5, 10, 15 minutes of you focusing on you, your breathing. You didn't have to worry about anything else. You know, just by sitting there, it was really rejuvenating. And I'm a country kid. I grew up on ranches. I grew up with a chainsaw in my hand. I still wear boots every day. I got boots Levi's on right now. But this meditation thing kind of worked. And yoga, I did a little bit of yoga. It's not my thing today, but it's still, there's something about it that's refreshing when you're working and just being able to focus on you rather than all the other stressors in the world. Peer support. Peer support is a big thing that is out there amongst departments and agencies. For example, we are, as a department, standing up a peer support group as a group of individuals that genuinely care and maybe have the initial answers for those counselors or initial ways of assisting people with getting help. Somebody to go to, for lack of better words. Within our police department we have in town, they also have a peer support. And if I feel that the topic is of a nature that needs to be confidential, I can go to a sergeant within the fire department and say, hey, help me. I need some help. I've been thinking about this. Can you just don't tell anybody? Please keep it confidential. And it's a way to provide peer support and get support from others, interagency and amongst ourselves. We need to be able to talk about our feelings and how some of these bad calls go. It's really important to the longevity of what we're doing. So here are some resources that Yorktown Fire referred to the National Volunteer Fire Council and the Fire EMS Helpline. There's another one, the next one down is the Code 4 Northwest. It is provides a comprehensive and holistic community of confidential support to people within the first responder and critical care family. So, as it said, confidential. Nobody else needs to know about this except that person on the other line and you. If you want to keep it confidential, it will be kept confidential. The Suicide Prevention Center and the Deer Hollow Recovery and Wellness Center in Sandy, Utah. This is another treatment center, much like I went to in Washington, D.C. They have usually about half first responders and then half general civilians. But they too provide an excellent program to help you kind of understand who you are and what you're doing, and they help you work on you. On Facebook, the Idaho First Responder Wellness Collaborative, recognize you guys are in a different state, but still, any of these wellness collaboratives that are on Facebook or any other resource have excellent resources as far as classes goes, online classes, and other articles that may pertain to you, but that's a good one to look up on Facebook. Need to load one more slide. And that's it, friends. This is my contact info. I generally talk to a lot of people throughout the country, more for EMT classes and such and trainings. But I've talked to hundreds of people from across the country on different things, whether it's a counseling thing or how do I become a firefighter. So I invite anyone that wants more information on what I'm doing or how to.
I want to tell you congratulations for being clean for 154 days or whatever it is now.
Stop throughout for any questions, but are there any questions you guys have right now?
Anybody else?
Do we have a protocol in our church where...
That's it. Yep, 154 days. It's tough, but
we're just asking each other if we have protocols for this.
Anything else? All right. Again, thanks for coming.
lot of people don't.
What's that? I couldn't hear.
Firemen think you're tough.
We think you're tough.
Oh, gotcha.
Counseling or debriefing. And girls do. Looks like men do too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, some of us. Did I hear a uh-huh? Oh, uh-huh. Okay. Yeah.
After a major call or catastrophe,
Let me ask you this: do you guys have a critical incident stress team or stress debriefings? Okay. Yeah. Some of the things we do after a critical incident is, even if it's a cardiac arrest, and we actually do a fairly large amount of cardiac arrests, but we do what we call a hot wash or a tailgate, but we essentially go back to the station and do a PIA, an analysis of how it went, good, bad, ugly. It's time to be honest about if someone wasn't cutting their weight. It's a time to reflect on what went really well. We do that after every major fire, accident, and medical call. And I think it's really good for all the responders, even if they don't speak up. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Again, thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Adam.
9 o'clock's late for training, but I guarantee I connected with at least one person in there, and